Kala, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Brakatahu, Brakatahu Shai, Brakatahu, Brakatahu Shai, Brakatahu, Brakatahu Shai, the water above, called Kadash. I'd like to give the honors to the elders, apostles, great millstone that teach this point, that teach this truth, the 100% truth, the true word of our Lord. Lesson of the day, we definitely keeping up with the world events, things is going on in the world. And I was watching beloved elder apostle Tahar video last night, and he was going into he always give us an update on what's going on in the world, but he was giving an update. He was giving some insight on in the times that we're in now. We have to stay vigilant in this truth. And he was saying sometimes he has a hard time coming up with topics and things to kind of go, even though there's a lot of things that's out there, but we have to stay motivated and encouraged in his faith, man. And our faith is in Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, and the promise that what he said. And we know these things are going to happen. We know in the spirit. But sometimes we can get disenchanted. We can get caught up in things of the world, and it takes us off focus. And one thing that he said is very important, that we should do a fast and ask Lord, to keep that spirit kindled, man. Keep that spirit to keep that flame going, in us. And sometimes we have to do a fast in order to get that fire going again, because it can be disenchanted because, you get your highs and your lows in this truth, man, because, 1 minute it seems like everything's about to unfold. The next thing, seems like, in the headlines, things kind of die down for a minute. So it has its hills and its valleys. And sometimes we get in them valleys, we can get disenchanted, get distracted, and get caught on other things, man. But the whole time, this truth continues to go out. And I see a lot of brothers, in some of the videos, we have to be very careful during this time because a lot of brothers become disenchanted, we get caught up in things. And like I mentioned yesterday about this one brother, he was mentioning about his job and all that. And I saw he did post a video last night, but we have to stay focused on, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. He gave us his truth. We have these jobs and other things that he's given us, but that's secondary to his truth, man. We still have to do the lessons, still have to do what the Lord has required us to do first and foremost. Everything else is going to fall into place. If you don't, if you put Yahweh Shai to the side, he's going to put everything that you need to the side, man. So I just want to kind of hit that point. But yeah, I want to get on topics, things that's going on in the world. Today, there was an ultimatum that was laid out, I think, this weekend, where DJ Trump, 45, said he's going to give them 48 hours to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And so Iran responded back and said, kick rocks, we not open up anything, and pretty much what you going to do about it. And so I was just watching today, this guy called Black Scout Survival. He always gives me pretty good update. He appears to be an Edomite. I guess he's prior ex-military, ex-Marine, but he always gives a pretty good insight, man, on it. A lot of these Edomites, they say he voted Trump, past 3 times, and he's one of the ones used to be one of those mega people, and he's starting to realize that the whole system is corrupted, and a lot of these Edomites starting to realize that, their food that's on the menu as well, especially at the Epstein files and all that's coming out. These Edomites are starting to realize that they're not nothing special to these elites, man. It was okay as long as they was over us, but as long as they thought they was going to be okay. But now that they're seeing that they're being destroyed also in the process, man, that these elites are looking at them like food, literally, and their food, same food that we eat, is being poisoned. Their same skies is being poisoned. The water and everything else. The same pharmaceutical companies are still, handing them out, medication. So they're starting to realize they're nothing special to these elites, man, so-called elites. And that's the beautiful thing about it, man, because the whole world is starting to wake up to Esau, Edom, man. And now even his own people starting to wake up. And therefore that takes us, to the Egyptians against the Egyptians, time of Jacob's trouble. Because, you have to realize that's here in Babylon the Great. So once they felt they had enough, it's okay for them to beat down on us. But once they felt they had enough, that their prey also, it's something's going to spark, and really that's what these elites want at the end of the day, the high gas prices, gas has going up, all that's really being instigated. They talk now. You hear people talking about that gas is not lasting longer, so they put shit in the fuel to make it burn faster. And I see people say, they always monitor the gas. And say they usually can fill up maybe 2 or 3 times going back and forth to work to get them throughout the week. Even though the prices are higher now, the shit is burning faster. Now instead of 2 or 3 times, they have to fill up 4 or 5 times, in some cases, So these elites are really putting a squeeze on, man. They pushing these buttons, and these so-called these Edomites, man, they're so quick to jump on Jake's neck for any little thing, man. They scared to buck against their elites, man. They standing down like a motherfucker, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And shalakia for the language, man. But you always see now. No, anytime Jake does anything, like when the time when they had that thing in Carolina, when Jake was supposedly which might have been a psyop, unalive the Edomite lady on the bus, man, he was ready to kick shit off right then and there, But since then, the Lord has put in their face, the thing with the e-files and, everything, all this truth is coming out that they're on the menu as well. They starting to wake up and realize, but they still ain't buck, man. They ain't saying shit. But let Jake go out here and do the least little thing. Jake becomes the focal point. You so-called Black Hispanics and Native Americans, And like I said, they've been going after the northern tribes with the ICE thing, They were loving that. Now that they seeing their asses on the menu, and they get ready to go over there and sacrifice their kids over there for these wars, man, for them little hats. It leaves a certain type of taste in their mouth, man. And, not to gloat over it, but it's good to see that, the Lord work is being revealed, man. And like the brothers always say, it's a beautiful time to be in, man, to see these things that's being unfolded right before our very eyes, man. These are things that the prophets of old has always looked forward to. And now we're seeing it play out right here in real time, man. Let me hit some scriptures real quick. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 2 and 3. I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling, all nations gathered against it. When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, that's Luke 21, verse 20. Or Revelation chapter 16, verse 12. The kings of the east. Hold on, what they got on here? Oh, that's what I'm looking for. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction. Because today Trump came out I probably got off topic, but like the guy from Black Scout Survival said, they gave him the ultimatum, and Iran bucked. So Trump come back today, and he was saying that we're in negotiations with them, and we kind of come to some type of agreement, and everything is going to be okay. And Iran said, we ain't saying shit. We ain't had no type of negotiation with you at all. And so, it's a back and forth now. And, these Edomites are saying, well, who's lying? You know who's lying. And every time these Edomites open up their mouth or they're moving their lips, they're lying, man. You know damn well DJ Trump is lying, man. Like I say, these Iranians, man, they're not bucking. They're going all in at this point for right now, And so Trump, it's look like he's trying to save face in the matter, Like this guy was saying, if you make that type of threat and then don't do anything, it makes you a paper tiger. People say, well, he's nothing but a lot of talk. You know how that goes down in the streets. Somebody's always boasting they big and bad until somebody slaps them in the face. Now it's come time to show and prove. and you're not proving yourself. So everybody's going to come after the bully, man. And that's what it's looking like what's going on right now. So what I did today, I put in the chat GPT what are major flashpoints that might ignite, get this thing jumping off between World War III. Let me another precept before I go into that. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. So out of those, what time are we in right now? We definitely not in a time of peace, man. We're in a time of war because everybody's fashioning their weapons together. They're sharpening right now their swords, man. They're getting prepared for the battle. They're not worried about right now building up their economies and all this right now. Even though everybody's trying to steal the oil or trying to control the oil, but it has there because of greed, it has to come through the sword. So everybody's sharpening their sword because everybody want that power position. And it's only coming to you Israelites, man, you so-called Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans. You're going to be the next rulers of all after all is said and done. Not the Moabites, not Ishmael, not definitely not Esau Edom, man. This time has come, man. And to mind you, I think it's 250 years is going to be, what is it, July 4th. So let's have this great big celebration, man. We catching hell getting there. Babylon the Great is having hell making it to that point. And by the time that date does come, man, ain't no telling what might be going down right during that time, man. It might not be no celebration, the way things are unfolding. Let me hit one more precept before I go into that. What I put in ChatGPT. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord, that he that hath taken against Edom, Esau Edom, and the purposes that he hath proposed against the inhabitants of Teman, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out, which is Israel, them small hatters over there, that's masquerading as the true Israelites. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. So they ones that creating all this fuss and all this turmoil that's going on in the world, man. The Lord don't want peace right now, so he's using these small hats to create this chaos that's going on, you know. So let's go to these major flashpoints that can trigger a World War III. We already know Russia and Ukraine. That's been going on, like maybe 2 or 3 years now. And I put this in ChatGPT. I'm surprised it didn't take me straight to the Iran because I said, this is what I gave. Give me a breakdown of potential starts for World War III with today's headlines and things that are escalating throughout the world. And that was number one. He's talking about flashpoint. No, that's not. That shouldn't be number one. We know number one is what's going on right now over there in the Gulf of Hormuz, man. But Russia versus Ukraine, ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, NATO, Europe, back in Ukraine, risk of direct NATO versus Russia. But we all know that NATO, eventually all of them going to turn on the whore. Who's the whore that rides upon the beast? The beast is NATO, man, the EU Union. Why this matter? If NATO troops are fully, Russia fears its war against the West. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. It says number 2, Israel versus Middle East, Gaza, Iran, Hezbollah. Israel in conflict with Hamas. Tensions rising with Iran. Hell, ain't no tension. Shit has jumped off into a damn war. They say it's a, they like to say it, they like to strum it up as being something less than a war. They call it an occupation. Not an occupation, I forget what they call it. But hell, it's a war, man. People losing lives. Tension rise with Iran, major escalation risk. Hezbollah, Lebanon involved. U.S. backing Israel. If Iran enters fully regional war, global powers are pulled in. Yeah, absolutely. Right now, everybody's trying to decide um, what side they're going to go on. But eventually, we know they all not going to side with Babylon the Great. I will make Jerusalem a cup, a trembling, all nations gathered against it. Read that. China and Taiwan. See, with all this going on, and then you know, Babylon controlling, certain parts over in the east. China said, hell, you doing all this land grabbing and all this. We might as well go ahead and take Taiwan. You didn't pull your forces back. Now we're seeing that your sword is not as sharp as you thought it was. Your military is outdated because you thinking that having a big military and all these big expensive weapons is going to intimidate. Now we're seeing that you've been chin checked by this little small country over there, Iran, which Iran is not really that small, but it's compared in size, to a global elite power of Babylon the Great. Oh, it's very small, man, and it's definitely holding its own right now. Right now, they're holding the cards, and the Lord set it up that way, and it's very strategic in that certain position with the Gulf of Hormuz, man. You couldn't have picked a better ignition point than what the Lord has set up, man, because that's such vital to the worldwide economy, and the Lord has set it up as being a major flashpoint. And it's no ironic that all these seven nations that Babylon the Great and Israel has chose to go after, they toppled all these other nations, the seven that was on their list, and the last one was Iran, man. And now that we see, um, that's going to be a major sticking point. Says China wants to reclaim Taiwan. U.S. committed to defend Taiwan. Military drills escalated, trigger points. Said China evades, U.S. intervenes in full Pacific War. But we got Babylon the Great got his hands so full of so much shit, especially what's going down in the South Americas. Got our hands in that. Greenland, the so-called Middle East. Everywhere. She spread thin, just like it was with the Roman Empire back in the days, man, trying to control and rule everything. And eventually, you start to lose power and crumble on the inside. North Korea, instability. I said that's another flashpoint. The economic warfare, sanctions, Russia and China, which I think because of this thing that happened, Babylon the Great has lifted sanctions off the Russian, so they can start selling their oil now. Man, it's crazy how everything's unfolded, man. Global alliances are forming. War blocks, U.S. seeing alignments, U.S. plus NATO and allies. Well, we seeing that starting to be fragmented now because DJ Trump has pretty much isolated himself from these other nations, man. And how do we know that? By him declaring, he asked the other nations to come help him fight Iran. These other nations said, no, we didn't start this. You didn't come to us and ask for our advice for you took your ass in there. So, no, we're not going to commit our troops to losing their lives in this. So that's how it stands right now. But things could change. But a lot of them saying, hell, you can't even use our countries as a place to refuel your for supplies or to fly your planes from. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Joel chapter 3, verse 9 and 10. Prepare war. Beat your plowshares and the swords. And that's what everybody's doing right now. They're not worried about, well, they are worried about it because it affects their economy. But that's not the main focus right now. Nations not preparing, worried about, you know, um, building an infrastructure and all those things right now. Right now, they're worried about their militaries, especially those nations over there in the so-called Middle East, because they was relying on Babylon the Great, which is supposed to back the petrodollar, especially those countries in the so-called Middle East, relied on Babylon the Great for their defense. So that's what we've been paying you for. You're supposed to be here to protect us. Here I ran and destroyed all those satellites that's supposed to keep us protected now. And then what we do have, you taking it from us and using it to protect them small hatters over there. So they kind of feeling some kind of way. say you going back on your contract, man. And so like I said, what's the name of the place over there? The UAB, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, um, Saudi Arabia. So they relied on Babylon the Great for their defense. And now, they're seeing that, and Iran have made an ultimatum, say if you're going to allow these um, Babylon the Great to use your place for defense against us, to attack us, not defense, but for offense against us, hell, we're going to attack you, because you're siding with the enemy. That's like me having somebody I got a problem with, and even though we're family, you over there helping this dude to attack me. So I got to look at you like an enemy, and that's what's going on over there with Iran and those neighboring countries. And so now they're saying, damn, you know, Babylon the Great is not protecting us, so you're reneging on this contract you made with us. And we know Esau, man, he can't be trusted for his contract. That shit means nothing to him. There's no honor among him. No honor in him at all, man. Like I say, anytime he opens up his mouth, it's a lie. And like I say, anything can happen, to escalate. One missile hit the wrong target, aircraft shot down mistakenly, you know, misinterpreted attacks, thinking that somebody's about to attack, so you do a preemptive strike, which that's one of the excuses they use for why they went into Iran in the first place. But everybody knows that that was a lie. They say we went there because, they was that close, 2 days from creating a atomic, weapon, a nuclear weapon. So that's why we went in there and got on offense with them, attacked early and took out their leadership, which I'm saying same excuse that they used with when they went into Iraq, saying that they have weapons of mass destruction, so we had to go in there and take them out and steal their oil. Same old play, man. That shit's getting old, man. And now all these other nations are being affected by it, even as NATO allies. And so a lot of these nations are getting pissed, man. You know, See, a false peace, sudden war, agreements made, then betrayal or sudden strike. And we know that they made agreements and they always go back on these agreements. Esau is definitely known for that, man. Economics collapse triggers wars. And we seeing right now, that's one thing they're talking about. Because of this thing that's going on there, every nation's already struggling right now. And then talking about the economy, oil prices going up. With oil prices, it's like a wave effect. Eventually, it's going to affect everything. Food prices going to go up. Everything's going. Materials going to go up because these things have to be transported by the use of oil. And who's going to pay at the pump? Who's going to pay in these grocery stores? Um, the average Americans, man. The average Babylonians. People throughout the world. And so everywhere, man, right now, everybody's being affected by this, them going in there and creating this situation, man. And so all these other nations throughout the world, they side eyeing Babylon the Great. What the fuck did you go over there and do that for? It says this pattern scripture shows nations versus nations escalation. That's St. Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. Nation shall rise against nation. Say what makes us different than any other time before, because right now we have social media, we have things that can be streamed in actual real time events versus World War One, World II. Things had to be reported by the news. We should know by the time it got to the people, these things were already been the truth has already been taken out of everything, so people was getting half the truth. But now we can see things happening in real time, because of the internet. And so it has an effect on people how they feel about certain things. While people are watching now more than ever, nuclear weapons exist, global alliances already formed, technology allows instant escalation, and economic systems are tightly connected, right? Because what's going on over there affects us over in Babylon the Great because um, the oil, people say, well, damn, why our oil going up? You know, we produce our own oil because it's all in the global market. So I asked ChatGPT, why isn't Iran with America and Israel, why is that not a major flashpoint? Because ChatGPT a lot is controlled by them small hatters, and it says, "You are not wrong. It is a major flashpoint right now. Damn right it is, especially where it's over there near where everything's supposed to unfold in how, according to Revelations. Why we are not seeing heavily in the U.S. media what actually happening right now. This is already a real war, not just tension. U.S. and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran February 28th. Well, here we are now in March. What's the date? March 24th. Damn near a month now, man. It's supposed to be over in a couple of days once they say they took out their leadership. Well, here's a month later, and like shit start to pick up, take it to a whole nother level. Because it's supposed to be a ground invasion going on, and once you send troops in there, you know that's just the beginning of something big that's about to happen. Iran is firing ballistic missiles into Israel. U.S. is still conducting ongoing strikes on Iranian targets. This is not hypothetical anymore. It's active. And they don't even mention that Iran has been shooting at those other supposed to be allies to us in the so-called Middle East and taking out a lot of their defenses. Because they've been in agreement with Israel and Babylon the Great. Iran is escalation weapons and strategy using cluster missiles that are harder to intercept, and not to mention the drones, the overwhelming the system with the drones and the ICBM missiles. It's spreading beyond just Israel and Iran. Absolutely. Yes, it is. And I notice it's trying to paint a bad picture, ChatGPT on Iran, but it's not talking about, because it's bringing up Iran striking um, energy infrastructures and stuff throughout the region. But Israel's been striking these things, and they've been doing false flags in these other countries to try to make it like it's Iran, and those things been proven. And it's not, Chat GPT is not bringing that up because we know who's been controlling the Chat GPT. And talk about Iran is striking, cities and infrastructure. Well, we already know them small hatters don't give a damn about striking cities and infrastructure. Hell, when they went over there, they took out a school full of kids, man. Damn near over 200 schoolgirls, man. They took it out purposely because they said that the schoolhouse housed the officials' children, man. So how low can you get, man? And that's what's fueling Iran's fury, man. you know, that's why they say, okay, you gonna do some shit like that? Hell no, we ain't backing down at all. Ain't no agreements gonna come. It's already hitting the global economy. Oil prices surging past $100 a barrel, which they said this thing could potentially go up to $200 a barrel. Global markets are unstable, gas prices are rising. War is already affecting everyday life indirectly. So Travis said, why aren't you seeing it heavily in America? Information is being fragmented. No information is being held back, and people and the Babylonian people are being lied to. like him saying that we done took out their leadership, and we done took out everything that they have, all their weaponry and all that. So now everything is cool, and that's just to keep the markets cool. But every time they say that, Iran still seems to show hey, they got the upper hand because they start firing those weapons again, firing those missiles, taking out shit. So they pretty much saying, "Stop your lying, man. We strong and we ready to go on. We can do this damn near forever because we've been." Iran said they've been preparing for this day for about 20 years because they know every time they go into negotiations. Plus, they seen what happened to all the countries around them, like Iraq, Syria, and all these other nations that was supposed to be the top seven that Babylon's supposed to take out. So they knew they was on the list. So they've been preparing for this day. You know. And another thing, because of the way their land mass is set up with a lot of mountains and stuff like that, they're very hard to invade and take over. It's not an easy take over to go in there and take these people over, man. They're strategically set within on the high ground, like they say in battle. They have the high ground, and right now it's creating political division in the U.S. because people can see shit real time. Even though the media lies to them, the mainstream media, but people can see through other media sources that you know this shit ain't going down as easy as they've been saying. They've been lying to us the whole time. They've been lying. Shouldn't have took their ass over there in the first place. People starting to say, "What about protecting our interests?" But we over there protecting those small hat interests, and then people are suffering behind it. People don't want to continue to suffer for something that didn't have to happen. And so people getting pissed off about it. Said control of narrative, strategic messaging. There are reports of pressure on broadcasters about the coverage. Accusations of fake news from both sides. Of course, anytime there's a war, there's always going to be, and the Esau Edom, he's perfect at manufacturing lies, man. That's one of his strong points. In war, information is also a weapon. Damn right it is. It says the reality, straight up. A direct U.S. Israel versus Iran war, major oil checkpoints threatened, multiple countries being pulled in, conflict narratives, and info wars. This is exactly how world wars begin. Yeah, because I took some time yesterday to go back and watch some Vietnam footages. Because ever since World War II, we've been pretty much getting our ass handed to it by these other countries. Because Babylon the Great has lost its power, man. Even though she has boasts the biggest army and military and all that, but honestly, we haven't won a war since World War II. And Vietnam was a great reference point from that point on. Even though we went over there and took a lot of countries or took the leadership out and created chaos like in Iraq and those other places. And another one? Afghanistan. We didn't win those wars, man. We had to pull the fuck out. That was just real recently during the Biden time that we had to pull out of Afghanistan. And like I said, I was watching the Vietnam War and how we got started there. And really that was all about going over there controlling the drug trade. And at the end of the day, because like I say, it's all about oil, drugs, and slavery. You know, that's their gods, man. Gold, oil, drugs, and slavery. And the people of Vietnam, man, they held their ground, man. They kicked their ass up out of there. We lost so much money and resources and lives during that war that we had no business having our ass over there, way over there, another part of the country. Like I said, the French was in there first. They beat the French ass, kicked them out of there, and then we supposed to went over there, so we was gonna try to take it over. You know, those people dug in, man, because they were fighting for their lives. You know, that's the same thing Iran said. We fight for our lives. So we're not just fighting for our interests, which that's what Babylon the Great is fighting over there, so they control that, so they can control the oil and control the world through that by manipulating the oil markets over there. Iran said, "Hell no, we fighting for our lives." Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20. Come, my people, hide thyselves until till the indignation be overpassed. How do we hide ourselves? Into these scriptures, man. Into this word, reading every day. And I have to tell myself about that, and doing the will of the Lord, what He's required us to do. Feed the sheep. And that's one of the main things. We have to feed the sheep, keep the sheep fed. That's what Lord told Peter, man. He said, in Acts, he said, what I want you to do, I want you to feed my sheep, And he said it 3 times, man. That solidifies it. That makes it, you know, that solidifies what he wanted to have done. But that's pretty much where we're at, man. Lord will, this thing take it to the next level, man. And it's going to be some suffering because of it. Of course, we all going to suffer, man. But why? We suffer for the will of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. And like Yahweh Shai said, man, He gonna protect His own, man. We're gonna be okay out of. We're gonna be saved out of it. Shit. And let me read these last 2 precepts real quick. St. Matthew chapter 6, verse 26. Behold the fowls of the air, for they say not, neither do they reap, though they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns. Yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? So we don't have to worry about once this shit shut down, which I think we know they're doing it purposely. They want to shut the economy down so they can bring the MOTB, which we say bring it on, because we know once they do that, we're going into the last few prophecies, man, and that's going to be World War III, and then Yahweh Shah with them angels coming back. St. Matthew chapter 6 verse 34. St. Matthew chapter 6 verse 34. Take therefore no thought no morrow, for tomorrow shall take for tomorrow. Shalaka. Take therefore no thought for the morrow, like tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself sufficiently until the day is the evil thereof. So we don't have to worry about, man, things being provided for us. Lord going to take care of His own, man. And Lord will, be able to not give up, not get disenchanted, not get caught up in the things of this world, and not get sidetracked, man, and stay on this truth. So with that being said, man, Lord will is edifying, hang in there, Shalom.